in a way. I don't think it'll interfere with much,
He's
though.
probably got the sound up a bit.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway. All right. Morning, everybody. Welcome to Talking Niagara this morning. We're almost 1 minute late. There we go. 1 minute late. Not bad. Not bad.
1 minute late by my calculations. 3 minutes late. I was a little late coming on. Oh, how unusual is that? But today I had a technical difficulty.
You
know
did?
what it was? Yeah, I couldn't turn on my computer. I was getting excited. Then I realized it was unplugged.
Yeah, there was a story. I went and worked at this company, and one of the things that they told me about is a problem that they had. The computer manager was telling me about the problem that they had. They couldn't figure out what the hell was going on for months and months and months. Their computer went down abruptly at 4 o'clock in the morning. All right. 4 o'clock in the morning just died completely. And then in about 20 minutes later, it all came back on. And it took back in those days, it used to take about 20 minutes for the computer to come on. So about 20 to 5, the computer's all up and running again, and and eventually all the software's going up and running. But he couldn't figure out for days why, for months and months on end, why the heck at 4 o'clock in the morning it used to go down. They called the computer guy in. There was nothing wrong with the computer. All right. Eventually, it turned out that the cleaner was going into the computer room, and there were no power sockets in the computer room for the cleaner to do the hoovering.
Yeah, so he unplugged it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. She unplugged it. Yep. And it was like, nope, you're locked out the computer room from now on. We'll hoover it when we need to.
I'm afraid one day I'm afraid one day a cleaner at the Pentagon is going to unplug something that's going to cause World War III.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. Okay, let's start with this one.
I was tidying up, and all of a sudden,
bang! Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. All right. So let's start with this one. 11 mayors have made 250 strong mayor decisions. Now, and what they were saying is the idea of the strong mayor powers was to accelerate and improve housing decisions. Well, only about 3% of those 250 decisions have been about housing initiatives. So that was a complete and utter failure.
I'm not so sure yet because the time hasn't ticked down. There hasn't been any major. I think everybody's pretty much on board with the housing thing now. But what are the other? The real question is, yeah, okay, you could say, you could give the mayors the strong mayor powers, and it will accelerate housing. Hopefully, it will accelerate housing. They want 1.5 million homes per I don't know, certain expectations of them, and the strong mayor powers were initially to put in for that to get over the NIMBY thing, not in my backyard, the slow and ponderous ways in which the city politics sometimes moves. They found a lot of problems with people like existing residents resisting new residents, all that kind of thing. And the strong mayor powers were supposed to help accelerate the building boom if possible. What we find out, though, that the strong mayor powers could be applied to anything, and that's a bit of a bit of a concern. Although, if you really read the strong mayor's powers, they're not as strong as they look, because the council can get together and override the any kind of veto or pronouncement the mayor does with the strong mayor power.
Yeah, and for example, Mayor Diodati has made 47 decisions, and most of his decisions have been about power to direct staff on bureaucratic, budgetary, or procedural tasks, such as approving bylaws rather than focusing on building homes.
Yes, so it's an accelerant. I suppose the strong mayor's powers could be an accelerant to make municipal politics a little bit more efficient and less bureaucratic.
Yeah,
but it must be noted that the council can get together. I think it was a 2/3 vote to overcome any rejection that the mayor has. For instance, if the mayor decides to approve a budget that the council hasn't really decided much on yet, or comes to that point, the council then could get together. I think it was 60% or something like that vote to overcome. I don't remember the details right now. So it's not as bad as it looked. When you think of strong mayor's powers, it looks like you're putting a king in place, an autocrat in place. No, it's just a method to speed things up a little bit. It's kind of like a veto power that could be vetoed, if you want to look at it that way, or a power or a pronouncement that can be vetoed by the council, but it takes a little bit more work. But has it been used? Is it a slip on the way of a slippery slope? That's another thing.
Yeah, that's a fair question. Yeah.
Now the biggest problem when this first came out was the NIMBY thing. No, you're not going to put it in my backyard. No, we're not going to develop this area because we like it. No, that kind of thing. So the people who are elected by the people, and they're afraid to make a move on development and things of that kind. But I think we probably overcome that because we realize we really do know that we're going to have these developments. We absolutely have to house our residents, and a lot of that's going to be housing stock. Now, the biggest problem I see with the housing stock is what we pointed out, I think, a week or two ago, is the type of housing stock that's being put up. And this has been a problem ever since.
Yeah.
The more affordable stuff is not the stuff that's being put up.
No.
I mean, it is, but it isn't in volume that we need.
Yeah. The one thing I also noted is I was heading in that part of town, and I noticed the development at Stanley and Ferry that stalled behind Dairy Queen. Well, that one started moving again.
Well, they're probably hitting their, what is it, the sunset clause.
Yeah.
Right, they're probably getting close to that, so they got to move on that if they're going to keep it going.
Oh, probably, yeah, and they're starting to move on that one again, so it looks as if that one's being reignited somehow. Maybe the firm got some money.
Well, you can see a lot of the money went into places that the developer likes. The developer likes the one house on a bigger lot kind of thing, or the fancier outfits. They make more money off of it. So what they were doing was obliging that market. There was a market that needed more houses that were a little bit more flush than the average middle class person. That's what they're shooting for at the beginning. Well, sure, that adds a lot more housing to that sector of the economy.
Yeah, but it doesn't deal with the area that we need most, which is the low end of the markets.
Sure. When we get all kinds of reports that, and we all know that our kids are doing less well than we did, their opportunities, financial opportunities, and their status in the economy is less than ours is for equivalent time. We know that, and we've heard all kinds of things about Canada and the West in general declining. Their middle class is declining. What does that mean? That means you can't do the same expectation of building bigger. You have to build more and better for the middle class who has lost a lot of its buying power. So where are you going to put the middle class?
Yeah.
Where are you going to put the poor? That's a big thing with the poor.
Yeah. Well,
But
and the thing is, yeah, exactly. We aren't building. We are hardly building any rent geared to income type homes. We're not building any. We're very little in the way of first response. Housing first kind of initiatives where people on the street get some form of place to live. We're hardly touching that end of the market, and we need to.
yes, nowadays you pretty much are shutting out more and more people from owning a home.
Yeah.
What you're doing to them is saying you're going to be an apartment dweller your whole life,
But again, that
because you're
just
never going to be able to make enough money to have a home. Now, to
yeah,
add building stock to that is one of the things that brings the prices down. But if you don't build the type of houses that fit that category, they still won't have the money to buy.
yeah. But that discussion we just been having has got nothing at all to do with strong mayor powers.
No, it hasn't.
Yeah,
It's an offshoot of it. It's related to it.
yeah,
And the reason why the strong mayors got their powers basically in the beginning was to make sure that the housing stock goes up.
yeah,
And we just diverted that to discuss what kind of housing stock is becoming available.
yeah.
But the strong merit powers, and the question is also, is it a step in the wrong direction? Is it what kind of
Well, Mike.
safety on
Well,
the
Mike
strong?
is basically saying so. That's two. He's saying 250 decisions made against democracy. I'm not so sure we can say that absolutely, Mike, because the cities may have, the councils may have made such decisions anyway. And if we're talking about the statement here, which was in Niagara Falls, Mayor Jim made 47 decisions, largely using the power to direct staff on bureaucratic, budgetary, or procedural tasks, such as approving bylaws rather than focusing on building. Right? That in itself would, you know, did that just improve bureaucracy, or that's a question that I'm having. And I see
Um,
you've got an answer. I see you've got an answer. Let's see what you're saying. Look at all the new homes built in Thorold, sitting empty for um, signs all over the place. Yeah, for rent signs all over the place. Yeah, well, that's the same with those 3 houses that were built at Bridge and Forth. They've been up for rent 3 times now.
yeah. Okay. So basically, just to give everybody a complete run or a reminder, the strong mayor's powers with centralized legislative and executive authority in the head of the municipal council are resisted through voluntary mayoral restraint. That has happened, but of course, it's not going to continue to happen. Not every city's got strong mayor powers, but most of them are. I don't think Waynfleet has it
No,
anymore, or yet. I mean,
never had it.
and okay, so formal city council pushback and legal constitutional challenges and organized grassroots community protests. Well, the council is the one that I think has the most effective. So now the council opposition systematic resolutions, local councils pass unanimous motions to formally reject the framework and signal disapproval of higher governments, exemption requests, veto overrides. Councils strategically band together to reach a high statutory threshold, such as 2/3 majority required to completely strike down a memorial budget or bylaw veto. So the council does have the power, but it has to come up with 2/3.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So if it is a big enough issue and the mayor has overstepped his bounds, the council can overcome it. So you have to balance: is the strong mayoral powers a thing that accelerates or makes government a little bit more efficient? Because of course we continually hear about how slow and ponderous and
yeah.
that how government is, and how it's you know just
Yeah,
overwhelmed by by the Byzantine methods by which it moves. Or is it good to have a strong mayor power? And if you don't like it, band together, get 2/3 and get rid of it. In our
absolutely.
council,
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Well,
what would 2/3 in our council have to be? It would have to be about 6, eh? I think.
6. Yeah. Actually, I think it's 5 2/3 technically.
We're going to have to cut one of the councilors in pieces then.
But anyway, yeah. All right. Morning, Karen Fraser. Good morning, everybody. Yep.
Morning, Karen.
Yeah. Welcome to the show. Okay, so anything else on strong male powers?
Not much. It's something.
I think
It's something to keep watching. Something
Yeah,
to keep
I think we
watching.
have
But
to
Mike
keep
has said
watching.
there,
Yeah.
what Mike has said there is the anxiety of most of us when any elected officials sort of moves towards the authoritarian or given that
Yeah.
power. However, is it an offset to the sort of Byzantine methods by which, or the glacial pace by which municipal government works?
Yeah.
You know,
Well, that was Doug Ford's original idea. Hey, we got too much of this kind of delay. We'll talk about it next time type thing, which is actually delaying a lot of the house building. The trouble is, one of the problems we've had just lots of delays to house building. We've hardly in the Niagara region hardly even been on track with any of the targets that Doug Ford has set. And quite apart from whether we believe that we should be running to those targets, which is another question entirely, right?
Yeah, I see a lot of housing being put up. Whether it's the right kind of housing or not, I don't know.
Yeah,
like
question. Fair, yeah, and there is builds going on, but the thing is, I think they're still at the the pace is not what I think Doug Ford would like.
Yes.
The pace is as it was before, basically, and we've still got some pretty big, developments that have not even started. That's as I said, that one at Stanley and Ferry's it's now about 3 years since it was approved.
Yeah, well, there are problems with workers. How many tradespeople are there? There's also
absolutely.
problems with materials. There's constant problems with material supplies because of before it was because of COVID, and now it's because of tariff wars that are going on, and the uncertainty there. So there's all kinds of things. And like I said before, one of the things that is hard for developers is for the government is to encourage developers to hit that target range where that we really need that for the middle class, particularly the more humble part of the middle class, the working poor or the working modest. You got a job and you're making $30 an hour. I mean, it's tough to be able to get enough money to get a place. And for a while, you're going to have to stay in apartments if you can. It's just, I don't know. The housing's gone up radically higher than any other commodity, and that hurts the middle class huge. And if you don't build homes, like back in the '80s when we had that huge inflation thing and we had huge interest rates, they started building smaller homes that people could afford. They don't seem to do that anymore. It's either a fairly expensive target of slightly. It seems to me that most of the places I've seen built, whether they're condos or townhouses or whatever they are, or houses, are for that market that's just a little bit higher in the over the middle of the middle class.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Okay. So moving on. Israel is seizing castles in South Lebanon.
Oh, I got Beaufort Castle. Is it Beaufort Castle they seized in southern Lebanon. That's an old
Yeah.
Crusader castle. If you know anything about history, the Crusaders were in the Middle East for a very long time. They only held Jerusalem for about 90 years, but after that, they still had their presence in Antioch and so on, all through that area. As a matter of fact, they held a presence there for a few hundred years before they were finally pushed out by the forces in and around there. I think
Yeah.
it was the Seljuk Turks that actually. Oh, was it Seljuk Turks or was it the Mamluks? Maybe were the ones that got rid of them. But eventually, they got pushed out of the Middle East. But this particular castle is way beyond where it's healthy for the Israeli army to be. The Israeli army could make some kind of justification for going into southern Lebanon and targeting Shia zones in there, but that's not what it's doing. It's going into southern Lebanon. It's pushed over 1 million people out of southern Lebanon, made them move. And then once it gets into their villages and towns that are now abandoned, they crush all the houses and everything. It doesn't matter if you're a Christian village or a Sunni village or a Druze village or whatever it is. If they're targeting Shia militias, they're doing exactly what they're doing in Gaza and the West Bank. It is collective punishment. They're going after everything. They're destroying everything. And they got their bulldozers. And one of their biggest, I think, what country refused to sell them bulldozers for a while there? I forget what country it was, maybe even the States, because they were using them to knock down people's homes. So they're crushing and eliminating villages that have been there for centuries, just like they did in the Palestinian areas and in Gaza, what they're doing now. Same thing, destroy, destroy, destroy. They want to make, and it looks like they want to go into southern Lebanon and keep it. Right now, I think the Israeli government sees that there's a whole lot of pressure. They haven't been able to control the media as they have in the past, and make them look as if they are the victims, when the world can now see that they are the victimizers as much as they're more than they're the victims. And in this battle that's been going on since 1897.
Lebanese Prime Minister Nawaf Salam made a televised address which he accused the Israelis of operating a scorched earth policy and collective punishment.
Yeah, and their intent, of course, is to capture all the land up to the Litani River. They have actually crossed the Litani River and heading north too. They've taken a big hunk of Syria. They've taken a hunk of southern Lebanon. They intend to keep it. If they can keep it, they'll keep it. And they see a lot of international resistance to their moves right now. And so they want to gobble as much as they can and hold on to it. And they figure in time there will be, they'll be forgiven, the kind of thing, or people will just stop paying attention to it. And they'll keep it like they have kept the Golan Heights. And they'll keep it like they've kept bunches of the West Bank. It's so Israel is a very good country if you're a Jewish person living in Israel, or even the small population of Christian and Muslim Palestinians that are citizens of Israel. Although they have less rights, they have they have pretty good lives, but they are occupiers of the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, and they are brutal masters. It's an apartheid state. Those people don't get a chance to, it's just like South Africa's apartheid, maybe even worse.
Well, this Beaufort Castle is a massive advance, because I'm looking right at the moment at the national border between Syria, between Lebanon and Israel, and that's a massive advance.
Yes, it's huge. There's a lot of resistance.
Yeah.
The Israeli government still is killing any kind of operative. They think they're bombing apartment buildings and stuff, like in Lebanon. they'll kill 25 people to get one guy, and you're talking about whole families being wiped out, or segments of families being wiped out, and
Yeah.
quite often no one's really sure who they're shooting at.
Yeah.
The they have information that somebody might be in some place, and then they bomb it. They're not the surgical team that they say, and they give very little very little care. They've got a person they think is an operative, they go after it. Quite often they make mistakes like that. The U.S. has made quite a few mistakes that way when it's bombed with drones people in Afghanistan and Pakistan and places like that. They later find out that they got the wrong car, or the person wasn't even there, or it has a similar name.
Yeah.
So sometimes you're not as careful. I think what's happening here is the Israelis don't care. They're not gonna target the guy as accurately as they think. They're just gonna bomb him whether he's there or not. If they bomb him, they kill the 20 people that's in this area, in this apartment. They wipe out 20, 25 people in that apartment. They know they get the guy that may be the guy they're looking for.
Yeah. This Beaufort Castle, when you see the picture of it and you see troops running up the path that leads to the castle, it looks more like a tourist route than a route that that is needed for strategically nowadays.
Sure, in days gone by, it would have been a tourist. There's Crusader castles all over the Middle East there, in Palestine, Lebanon, and Syria, and what probably a few that are still left over in what is now
many of these would be considered. Many of these would be considered, well, not holy sites per se, but they would be considered part of a place you might well go. If you're visiting that area, it's almost like a homage to the Crusaders of old.
Well, to me, I wouldn't pay homage to the Crusaders. I would be interested in the historical site as a historical site.
Yeah.
When you think of the Crusaders and what they did in the Middle East, it's hard to pay homage to brutal.
Well, some do.
Warlords. When they captured Jerusalem, you know what they did. It was a 1089 or something. They captured Jerusalem. You know what they did? They slaughtered everybody.
Yeah.
They glorifyingly said the streets were running with blood of all the people that were in the town. They slaughtered all the Jews. They slaughtered the Christians, because the Christians were different kind of Christians. They slaughtered the Muslims. They went into a berserk rage, and they slaughtered everybody in town. Contrast that when the Muslims retook the town, they surrounded it and they said, "Look, you can have it this way. We'll take the city by violence, or you can leave, and we'll let you leave." So they let most of the people leave without bloodshed. And the Crusaders were just really like Richard III or Richard I, King the Lionheart, right? Well, he went to the Crusades, and what did he do? Like at one time, he got frustrated and killed 3,000 inhabitants of what is it, Acre? I think it was the town was, but I'm not quite sure. So what did the Muslims do? Okay, we're going to kill 3,000 of you. So they had 3,000 Christian captives, and you know what I mean? That's the mentality of the Crusaders back then, and today, today, in the mothers will scare their children. Will discipline their children by saying, "If you don't behave, I'm going to get you Richard the whatever his name is, that come after you."
Yeah, but there are still some people who believe in these places being effectively holy sites.
Crusader castles?
Yeah. Anyway, there are some people out there, right? Okay.
Well, there were some places where relics
Israel out there. Sorry, say again.
There are some castles or something where the churches have relics in them, holy relics. Like the spear of St. Andrew.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah. Okay. I get you. Get what you're saying. Yeah. Okay. All right. Oh. All right. Don't know what's going on here.
Well, basically, what I
Right.
was
Israel
saying
to
that
strike Beirut, says Rick.
the idiots. Look, so let's be very clear of what's happening
Yeah.
in
They
Lebanon for
have
everyone.
already.
Oh, they've hit it many times. So what's happening here in what is Lebanon? Okay, Lebanon is a place that has a large amount of Christians. Uh, they have Sunni Muslims. They have Druze. The Druze are an interesting group, a sort of a Muslim offshoot, but aren't Muslims. So they have so there are the Druze, the the Alawites. They have Alawites, which is a Shia offshoot, and of course they have the Shias, and most of the Shias were typically lived in the south of Israel. When Israel, or I mean the south of Lebanon, when Israel initially invaded Lebanon in the 80s, the Shia Muslims in the south of Lebanon thought of them as a liberator at first, then realized that they were there to stay and push them off their land and all that kind of stuff. So then they started to resist, and there was born Hezbollah, which is the party of God, and they're made up of Shia Muslims. Now, the Shia Muslims became a very, very powerful portion of the government. So now you have the Christians, you have the Sunni population, Muslim population, and you have, of course, the Druze, and you have a sizable Shia population that has resisted Israel and become allied basically with Iran, because Iran is a Shia nation, and it's in Iran's interest to keep its presence known there. Now, Hezbollah helped fight for the Syrian government. It has been reduced in power there, but it is still a strong faction. And we know that Nasrallah was killed by that incredible strike in Lebanon years ago. He was the spiritual and political leader of Hezbollah, and of course, we know about the phone pagers and so on and that. So they spent a lot of money and time dissecting the Hezbollah leadership. However, they're still there, and they still resist. And the more Israel comes into the south, and the stronger they will get, because now the Lebanese government, which is supposed to be the one that is the secular one, basically, or the one that's supposed to speak for all sectors of the Lebanese government and people, find it hard to deal with Hezbollah. Plus, when Hezbollah is made stronger by invasions by Israel, so the Lebanese government is trying to be tasked with controlling Hezbollah, which is not going to be easy, you know. And the Lebanese population in general are getting pretty angry at Hezbollah for keeping war so alive. And Hezbollah is not getting a great reputation anymore either, because they're the ones that controlled the port where that enormous explosion happened. You remember that in the port of Beirut that killed 200 something people. Mm-hmm. So their reputation was tainted by that incident too. So basically, Hezbollah is an armed militia group within Lebanon, which is a country that does not really care to have an armed militia group inside it, but has very little control over it.
Yeah.
Because the central government is so weak, and the Lebanese army, which is not Hezbollah, would find it very difficult to overcome Hezbollah.
Yeah.
You know.
All right.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say there's also a related story to this that I came across, because when I came across this story about southern Lebanon, there was also on the same page, gas prices fell sharply on Sunday night in Israel,
Yeah. Do you read the reasons for that?
because of
Not once in there did they. Not once in there they really say that it had to do with the war. It had to do with how the shekel was doing against the American dollar.
yeah, exactly that. Yeah,
Now that
the
if you
strengthening of the shekel is what's to do with it. Yeah,
yeah, so they're not being truthful for their citizens, are they? And this is the sort of censorship and control the government seems to be having on its citizens. They're not getting the straight scoop of what's going on in the war or why it's affecting them.
yeah,
So they're talking about the strength of the shekel against the dollar. The reason why the price of oil has come down because the Iranians seem to have some sort of faith that there will be some sort of ceasefire. It's not what the Americans are saying or thinking. It's more what the Iranians are thinking.
yeah.
The Iranians are sort of hope it looks like they're going to comply with some parts of the ceasefire, and and it says Rick says, and the orange guy says no. Well, I would say uh, yeah, the problem with the orange guy is he says yes, then he says no, then he says yes, then he says no. How many deals are oh, we're very getting close. We're getting close. We're getting close. We're getting close. It's like the seesaw thing. I think basically what they're trying to do is find out where the rest of the Iranian leadership is because they know all these communications have to go out there and they can follow the
Yeah.
communications.
By
They
the,
follow the
by the
communications. As soon as they find a guy, they kill him.
yeah,
Like that admiral in Iraq, like the guy that took over for the Navy. What he did is he made one tiny text to his kids or his family, and that was all it took for them to find him and kill him. So
yeah,
they're being very, 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 very cautious on what kind of communications they use during this negotiation. Remember, they were double crossed during the negotiation when they started the war. They were in
yeah.
midst
Oh yeah,
of negotiations in Oman, and everyone, the Omani says, we're very close to a deal. And almost before he could get that out of his lips, they attacked all the leadership in Iran and
yeah.
knocked out
Well, the
50
other
members right away.
and the other interesting thing in relation to that this weekend is the story. There was a story out there, and as far as I can tell, it's bogus, absolute bogus. That Iran had a nuclear test at the weekend. Yeah, yeah. There is, there is nothing. No real proper press is actually backing that story up. There is, there's there's people on Facebook saying it, giving supposed fake headlines for that, but it never occurred.
Oh, it's the fear factor thing. It's just like the 40 children who was beheaded in the October 7th attack, which never happened. That was one of the first headlines that come out of the October 7th attacks by Hamas
Yeah,
on Israel was 40 babies were beheaded or 50 babies were beheaded. None of that was even
none
close
of
to
it occurred.
true.
Yeah, yeah,
But it took quite a while for the press to dig into that to see how true it was, and it wasn't true at all.
yeah,
So nowhere even close. But the I don't think things like that. The president himself is saying, "Whoa! If we didn't go after them, they would have destroyed Israel by now. European nations, and then before too long, they would have been bombing us." That's a pile of rubbish.
yeah.
The United States has got thousands of warheads and their hydrogen bombs. Can you imagine Iran attacking the United States with a nuclear bomb? It'd be turned into an ashtray.
Yeah.
First
Yeah.
of all, they don't have a missile to go that far. But even if they did, can you imagine, right? And the type of bomb they would be able to make would be a fission bomb, and it would be around the strength of Hiroshima
Yeah.
if they were lucky, if they could get it this far.
Yeah. Yeah. And
And
getting
then
it that
you can
far.
imagine what would happen, right?
Yeah.
Iran would turn into an ashtray. Two or three
And getting it
hydrogen
that
bombs, and there
far.
would be no more country.
Yeah.
You know,
And getting it that far would rely upon either getting it across the Pacific explosion because it would be done by then, or getting it across Europe and the Atlantic explosion, it would be done by then, you know.
yeah.
Okay.
It's idiotic, but the fact is, he relies upon the ignorance of the American public,
Yeah.
and of course the American public. Oh my God, we're going to get hit by a nuclear bomb, or Israel's going to get wiped out by a nuclear bomb. Israel's got 300 of its own.
Yeah.
You really think that Israel's going to get knocked out by a bomb that's not even made?
Yeah.
You know.
Okay. So just because we were talking about prices there, the average gas price currently in Canada is 172.2. So if you're paying less than that, you're getting a bargain. The highest priced province is 194.3 in Northwest Territories, and the lowest priced province is 163 in Alberta.
It's going down pretty close around here. It's lots of places are in the $1.50s again here. I think that the general. I think this is an old article. I think the general trend is down because there's enough pressure on the United States now to end this war from outside that they're going to have to find a way out because it's affecting the world economy in such a way that it's going to negatively affect the American economy. Mm-hmm. We were isolated. We were insulated from that a little bit, aside from the high gas prices. But the rest of what's happening in Europe and around the world is going to affect North American economy if this thing doesn't end. Also, the Saudi Arabians apparently are fed up with the U.S. They've stopped them. They don't let them use their airspace anymore, and they don't want their whole oil infrastructure destroyed. Yep. Because Iran is in a particular position, they could wipe out vast amounts of Saudi oil infrastructure and Qatari infrastructure.
It's strikeable distance, right? That's the thing. It's in striking distance, right? Anyway,
so what the Saudis are saying, finish them off completely with a full force, like invade and destabilize them, or shut it down. Do one of the two.
Yeah.
Because if you go in full force, then we can actually deal with the ramifications of our oil infrastructure being destroyed because we rebuild it and we don't have to worry about Iran thereafter. But if you're not going to do that, what you're doing now is just hurting us.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're right. They're right. All right. Okay. All right. Ontario is unveiling a framework to allow for a defense industrial strategy.
Yes. Well, Dougie sees opportunity, or at least it looks like that.
Well, and he's looking at creating 43,000 jobs.
Yeah. On the back of the new initiatives for defense contracting.
Yeah.
What have we found? We found a lot of initiatives going out now. And now this is one of the things that we can thank the orange fella for, because if he hadn't done what he'd done, we would have been happily just leaning on them and paying our 1%, what we should, not even 2%, but now we're looking at a 5% increase all across NATO. The wake-up call has come out in two ways. First of all, the United States cannot bear be the policeman of the world anymore, particularly Europe. Europe is fairly wealthy, and they're saying to them, you better pony up and start paying more because we got China to worry about, and we can't. You gotta sort of, quit leaning on us. That was very fairly said, and that's what's happening. So all the different countries, reluctantly at first, but now enthusiastically, are moving towards more and more defense capabilities.
Yeah.
This 5% threshold is completely unheard of. But what will it do? The NATO nations are getting together and trying and funding each other for the rehabilitation of the defense networks that are and creation of new defense networks, which means there's going to be lots of contracts going out there.
Yeah.
And Canada itself will need a lot of new munitions, and Canada will build them for the rest of the NATO. So we look in a really, really good position, and particularly Ontario.
And Ontario's putting together a 10-year strategy dedicated to growing the province's defense industries and positioning its companies and workers for longer-term success. That's what basically the province is putting together right now.
It's the old adage that we had forgotten about earlier on, when we kind of just dismissed the world as being more of a safer place and we really aren't going to get into major problems anymore. And we just kind of, all our commitments, we turned our back on our commitments and paid less and watched our military get old and out of date. They forgot the old adage. It's been there forever. It's, if you want peace, prepare for war. If you want peace, prepare for war. Look what happened. The Nazis just about took over all of Europe. Why? Because every country was not prepared for war.
Yeah.
Britain's armed forces were extremely reduced. The United States, they had old equipment and old, when they finally got into the war, they were so poorly equipped. I mean, they had the mighty industrial complex to bring them up to snuff pretty quick. And plus the fact that they weren't being bombed or anything else like that, but so they could do it. But no one was prepared for war, and generally speaking, and that's why the Nazis did as well as they did. So that old adage, where it comes from, whatever his name is in China or whatever, most will say, if you want for peace, prepare for war. In other words, make sure that no one wants to come after you, because they're going to get hurt.
Yeah, you're talking Sun Tzu.
Sun Tzu, yeah, that's the guy.
Yeah, that's who you're thinking about. Yeah, and
the art of war.
Yeah, the point being is that in fact, actually, we've been paring down all of that. Unlike the 60s, if you wind the clock back to the 50s and 60s, Third World War was going to happen anytime now, right now, right? There's and a lot of that was about propaganda more than reality. But
because what would happen, politicians would use it for fear factor stuff.
Yeah.
Right. Just like what they're doing now. Oh, we're going to get a big bomb come right here into New York City from Iran.
Yeah. Yeah. And the testing of stuff in Iran, it's not traceable. There was no test this weekend.
Of course not.
Of course not. It was not it's not scientifically backed up, right?
Well, sure. Look what the lies they're saying. Like the orange fella says, if he didn't bomb Midnight Hammer back a year ago, if he didn't do that, Israel wouldn't exist right now, wouldn't exist, because Iran would have had a bomb and blasted them.
Yeah. Right. No. Yeah. It's not true. It's totally untrue. Totally not true at all.
Yeah. It's just dumb.
And
Iran if they did that, even if they attacked Israel with a bomb, Israel's got 300 of its own plus, so it would retaliate. But even if they couldn't, the United States would nuke them. As soon as you start throwing nukes around, you're going to be it's the dumbest. I mean, you'd have to be, I don't know. It's the stupidest. But the problem is we are ignorant, and they take advantage of our ignorance. by telling us this rubbish.
Right. Rick is saying GST top up June 2nd, 2026, tomorrow.
What's that in reference to? Is the
yeah, good question.
I know they. Is he referring to the? They took off some of the federal charges on gasoline to keep it low. If the price of gasoline comes down, they might put those federal charges back on.
Maybe, yeah. Okay. By the way, Rick, there's a picture of you in that wall of in that thing. I'll give you a copy of what I've got.
Picture of what?
It's a private message to Rick. Okay.
Okay.
Don't respond on that. Yeah, 50%. Yeah, on food. All right. Okay. Moving on. Is there anything else we need to cover on this?
I don't think so.
Don't think so. The only other thing to move on to right now is that. Okay, so currently, every once in a while we kind of touch on these. Canadian federal polls are currently really showing that the Liberals are in the lead on pretty well every poll.
Yes. As a matter of fact, it might have been better to have had an election. If they had, they probably would have had a much bigger majority than they have now if they had an election.
Yeah.
I mean, it saves the Canadian taxpayer the money of spending on that particular election. But if they had an election, they would have probably clobbered the Conservatives quite a bit. Now, this is a problem for Pierre Poilievre because there are now murmurings. Like he did get support earlier in the year and he became the leader again. But because of the persistent low numbers of the Conservatives, there might be a challenge to his authority after all.
Yeah. And even in
there are rumors are out there that they're he may lose the top job.
Yeah, absolutely. And the question here is like even if we look at Alberta, the Liberals are doing better. Are doing much better. They're not in the lead in Alberta, but they're doing much better for Alberta than they have traditionally. Right?
Well, yeah. Well, at times, Liberals have done reasonably well. Actually, the Albertans, I think Trudeau did reasonably well out there in his first run in 2015. But he quickly became dumb as a bag of hammers, and offended the West, as do just about every numbskull liberal there ever was. But things have changed now. You got Carney; he's a Western lad. He sees the value of Western oil and Western minerals and Western all that and the energy that it provides. He's no dummy. Right? He believes he's an environmentalist on one hand, but on the other hand, he's a practical person. You need jobs. You need to get your oil to market because if your oil doesn't go to market, somebody else is going to sell the oil. It makes no sense not to sell oil or reduce oil production because that's not going to help anything.
Yeah,
the world's oil
just makes us
oil.
Yeah.
Not only that, as we've seen lately, it sure does love safe sources of oil, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Canada is one hell of a safe source of oil.
And the irony here, of course, is that even in British Columbia, and pretty well everywhere, I think you're seeing the collapse of the NDP, right? Even in BC, where they were seemingly had a bit more strength.
Well, Jagmeet did not leave the party in good shape.
No, definitely did not.
No.
Yeah.
He hung on to the Liberals too long. He did not he did not
And
get
what he got
independence.
he got one thing out of them: dental care.
Yeah, and it was a long slog to even get that. They even
Yeah.
delayed and but he got the dental care. But what he did, and again, like I think we got to even predicted this back in a way that he's going to emasculate the the NDP party. They're going to be nothing because they got nothing now. They had a pretty strong presence, but they don't now.
Yeah.
And but however, in Alberta, the NDP party, provincial NDP party, is getting strong again. So there are pockets in the country where the NDP have not really lost much, but federally, I can't even see them coming back for a long time yet.
Well, they need, in order to come back, basically they need they need somebody like Jack Layton, an independent thinker who stands out from the crowd, who is that person, is that independent thinker. Whether the new leader becomes that, I don't know. Time will tell, right?
What they need is a leader that tells Canadians, first of all, how they are going to make Canada more prosperous.
Yeah.
Right. And then after they tell them how Canada is going to be more prosperous, then after that, then they're going to tell Canadians how they're going to take that prosperity and share it more equitably along the way with social programs and other things. But first and foremost, you have to make Canada strong. If you can't make money, how are you going to share what you don't have?
Yep. Yeah, exactly. And almost in every sector of you're talking about those with income below 50,000, Liberals are in the lead. Those with income between 50 and 100,000, they're in the lead. And again, in almost every demographic group, male, female, the Liberals are in the lead. It's closer on males than it is on females, but there's still largely a Liberal lead in most categories right now.
Well, generally speaking, the female population leans a little more left.
Yeah. It's a wider gap in the females than it is for males, but at the moment, the Liberals are ahead on the male population. And again, if you look at the age brackets, they're ahead on the 18 to 29-year-olds. They're ahead on the 18 to 30-year-olds. They're ahead on the 30 to 39-year-olds. They are behind on the 30 to 44-year-olds. They're ahead on the 35 to 49-year-olds, and they're tied on the 35 to 54-year-olds.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the older you get, the more gap there is towards the Liberals.
Well, at the moment, I don't see the Carney juggernaut slowing down any. Although it is, I think Polyev brought up some pretty good points about the Canadian defense industry moving on. He's saying that he's afraid that too much of it's bogged down in big deals and bureaucracy, and he doesn't see the average Canadian soldier getting as much equipment rather than a lot of people being rich making it. So that's a reversal. That's the Conservatives talking, and they're usually the ones that are accused of that kind of thing. So anyway, these are strange times we live in.
All right. Okay. All right. They are unusual times, but I thought, since we were talking about, since we touched on popularity, it was important to actually discuss that in relation to the whole Canadian situation.
Yeah.
All right. And I think we'll leave it there at the moment.
Okie doke. And I'm going to bring up Gaza as again today. We already talked about what's happening in Lebanon and the coarse and vulgar means by which the IDF is trying to capture a greater Israel. You can see it from their point of view sometimes. Yeah, you got to, that's how they convince their own population to keep going with this. But in Israel itself, they have universal health care. They have very inexpensive education. And why do you think that is? It's because they're being supplied huge by U.S. Government donations and civilian donations to the government. And that's all coming out of the West, mostly out of the United States. And yet, over here, the United States is fighting their wars all the time and supplying them with weapons and supplying them with money all of the time. Weapons, money, all that to fight their wars. And yet, the American citizens are struggling with healthcare. They're struggling with their economy. They have an enormous debt. And what are they getting back from it? It's hard to say. And plus the Israelis are acting like real barbarians. This has to stop. And the poor people in Gaza in particular, I'm really, really worried about the children. They have wasting going on in there. There's not enough food, not enough water, not enough medicine, anything. There's no housing. They're living in tents. 82% of their houses are completely destroyed, and they're living in tents. There's almost no building to live in, and they're living in half the territory they normally did. And now the IDF wants to take 70% of Gaza and push everybody onto 30% of the land.
Yeah.
That's how callous and coarse they are. And it's very hard for the West to turn that around because of the influences of AIPAC and everything. I just want to zero in on that, calling upon Israel to act like a Western nation, like a real democracy. Anyway, without further ado, I bid you adieu.
Yeah, and have